I shouldn't remember the exact way her voice sounded that night, but I do. Soft, unhurried, like she had no reason to be nervous. Me, on the other hand, my palms were already damp before I even stepped into her doorway. She had called me over because the light in her living room kept flickering. A neighbor's favor, that was all it was supposed to be. I told myself I'd be in and out in 20 minutes. But when I arrived, the first thing she said wasn't about the light. I didn't invite anyone else. I froze. She leaned against the doorframe, her hair loose like she hadn't expected company at all, yet her eyes steady on mine. I laughed too quickly, trying to shake it off. So it's just us? Her lips curved, not quite a smile, not quite denial. She just let me in. The apartment was dim except for a single lamp by the sofa. The air smelled faintly of coffee and something floral, though the cup on the table had gone cold. I remember noticing the silence most, the kind of quiet where you can hear your own heartbeat, where every sound you make feels too loud. I busied myself with the fuse box, though truthfully I had no idea what I was doing. She stood close enough that I could feel the warmth of her presence behind me. Not touching, but near. So, you live here alone? I asked, crouching down, voice steady but too casual. She hummed, a low sound that made me glance back. Mostly. Her eyes didn't leave mine when I turned, and it was me who looked away first. I asked a few more pointless questions about the wiring, about how long the light had been flickering, but I barely heard her answers. Her voice lingered in my ears longer than her words. I kept swallowing, wiping my palms on my jeans, wishing I could hide the way my chest felt too tight. At one point, I dropped the screwdriver, clattered on the tile, sharp and ringing. I bent down quickly, but she was faster, her hand brushing mine as she picked it up. Just skin against skin, nothing more. Yet I couldn't move. She didn't apologize. She just placed the tool into my hand, her fingers slow to let go. My throat caught. Cold hands, she murmured, almost absent-mindedly. I wanted to answer, but no words came. Instead, I straightened, stepping back, giving her the space she wasn't really asking for. She stayed still, watching me with an unreadable expression, like she was waiting for something I hadn't learned how to give. The light flickered once more above us, casting shadows across her face. And in that half-darkness, she finally broke the silence. "You don't have to rush," she said quietly. "I don't mind if you stay a little longer." Her words landed heavier than they should have. I nodded, though I didn't know what I was agreeing to. I turned toward the lamp, pretending to study it, but I could feel her eyes on me. Steady, patient, unsettling. And just when I thought the moment had passed, I heard her take a small step closer. I felt the faint brush of her sleeve against mine. The screwdriver slipped again from my grip, this time softer, but neither of us bent to pick it up. Instead, I heard her whisper, not quite a question, not quite a statement. "So it really is just us." And before I could answer, the room fell completely dark. The darkness held for a breath too long, as if the whole apartment had decided to conspire with her words. I felt my throat dry up, the air pressing down heavier than before. She found the lamp switch by instinct, light spilling back into the room. And for the first time, I noticed the framed photographs on the shelf behind her, her standing beside a man I didn't recognize, smiling younger, the kind of smile that made me suddenly aware of how dangerous it was to even be here. I pretended to keep busy, fiddling with the wires, but my thoughts were scattered. I kept wondering if that man was her husband, if he still came around, if he'd knock on the door at any moment. "You don't have to fix it," she said softly, breaking into my silence. "Honestly, it's been broken for weeks. She stopped, biting her lip, searching for the right words. "It gets quiet at night." I glanced at her then, surprised she had admitted that. The regret in her eyes made me want to say something, but my tongue stalled. I bent back down, but I couldn't focus on the fuse box anymore. She moved closer, sitting on the armrest of the sofa, her bare foot tucked under her. I noticed the chipped polish on her toenails, the faint crease in her blouse like she'd been lying down earlier. Details I shouldn't have been noticing. I thought about leaving, about how easy it would be to say I couldn't fix it and walk back to my own apartment. But then I heard her sigh. Not the kind you give out of frustration, the kind that escapes without permission, a sound heavy with loneliness. And suddenly I understood. The photographs weren't just decoration. They were reminders. Whoever that man was, he wasn't here anymore. You ever wish things had turned out different? She asked suddenly, still staring at the shelf. I froze again. It wasn't the kind of question you throw at someone you barely know. But maybe that was why she asked me, because I didn't know her well enough to judge. All the time, I said before I could stop myself. My voice came out quieter than I meant. Her eyes met mine then, and there was something unguarded in them, something that made me forget about the wires, the danger, everything. I gripped the screwdriver tighter just to stop my hand from trembling. The room felt smaller now. The lamp buzzed faintly, the air heavier with every second of silence between us. Then she stood, walked over, slow enough that I heard every creak in the floor. She stopped beside me, close enough that I could smell her perfume again, faint and familiar. "Stay a little longer," she said, her voice almost a whisper. And this time she didn't just stand near me. She reached out, her fingers brushing against my arm. Deliberate, steady, not by accident. I opened my mouth, words almost spilling out, words I shouldn't say. But before they came, I caught myself. Her hand lingered, and all I managed was a single breath. Maybe I should. But I didn't move. Her hand still rested on my arm, and I could feel every nerve underneath my skin tightening, as if my body was betraying me. I should have pulled away. I should have said something light, something safe. But the silence between us felt like a current, pulling me deeper. I cleared my throat, forcing out the words I thought would anchor me. I really should go. But my voice cracked on the last word, and her eyes caught it. She tilted her head, a quiet smile ghosting at the corner of her lips. Not teasing, not mocking, but as if she had seen through every layer I tried to hide. "Always so quick to leave," she murmured. I didn't answer. Instead, I bent to pick up the screwdriver I'd dropped earlier, holding it like a shield. But when I stood again, she was even closer. Her blouse brushed against my shoulder as she leaned in, pointing toward the shelf. "Can you reach that?" she asked, though she could have easily done it herself. I reached up anyway, my arm brushing against hers. The movement brought us close enough that I could feel the warmth of her breath against my neck. My chest tightened, one wrong move, and this would become something we couldn't take back. And then, suddenly, a sound broke through the tension. Her phone vibrated on the coffee table, the screen lighting up with a name. A man's name. I didn't read it aloud, but she saw my eyes flick to it. She hesitated before answering, fingers hovering, then finally declined the call with a press of her thumb. The silence after that seemed louder than the vibration itself. "You're not expecting anyone?" I asked carefully, trying to mask the edge in my voice. "No," she looked straight at me as she said it. "Not tonight." Her honesty left me unmoored. I turned back to the lamp, though it was already fixed, anything to distract myself from the heat rising in my chest. But my hands betrayed me, tightening too much on the screwdriver, fumbling as though I'd never held one before. I thought of excuses to leave. An early morning, unfinished work, a friend waiting. But every excuse dissolved when I caught her watching me. Not with impatience, but with something closer to expectation. "I shouldn't be here this late," I said finally, the words heavy but weak. "And yet, you are," she replied, almost like a challenge. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. My gaze dropped to her hand, resting lightly on the sofa arm, just inches from mine. All it would take was a single, reckless gesture. I forced my hand back to my side, gripping the screwdriver until my knuckles ached. But then she shifted closer, her shoulder brushing mine, intentional this time. "Do you really want to leave?" she asked, voice low, steady. I couldn't answer, and in that silence I realized maybe we were already past the point of no return. The silence stretched until it felt unbearable. I could still feel the heat from where her shoulder had brushed mine, the weight of her question hanging in the air. "Do you really want to leave?" I swallowed, buying time I didn't have. "It's not about what I want," I muttered, but even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. Her brows lifted slightly. "Then what is it about?" I should have lied. I should have deflected. But something in her tone, steady, patient, almost daring, unraveled me. "You," I said quietly. The word slipped out before I could stop it. I stared down at my hands, at the worn handle of the screwdriver I still gripped like a lifeline, wishing I could take it back. When I finally looked up, she hadn't moved, but her eyes had softened, and that was somehow worse. She wasn't mocking me, wasn't brushing it off. She was listening. "That's dangerous," she whispered, almost to herself. I laughed once, too sharp, too nervous. "You think I don't know that?" The phone on the table buzzed again, cutting through the moment like a blade. Same name, same unanswered call. She reached for it, hesitated, then flipped it face down without a word. "Who keeps calling?" I asked, though my voice was quieter than I intended. "Someone I should have let go a long time ago," she admitted. The rawness in her voice startled me. Not because of what she said, but because she allowed me to hear it. I let the screwdriver drop onto the table, the clink loud in the silence. My hands were empty now, no more distractions. "You don't have to explain," I murmured. "But I want to," she said quickly. Her eyes locked on mine, unblinking. It's been years since anyone really listened, since anyone stayed. Her words hit harder than they should have. I wanted to say something back, to bridge the space between us, but my mouth was dry, my thoughts tangled. Instead, I stepped closer without meaning to. My shadow folded into hers beneath the flickering light. The air between us was warm, heavy, charged. "Tell me to leave," I said finally, my voice rough, almost breaking. She didn't. Her hand lifted slightly, hesitated in the air between us, then settled against my chest. Fingers splayed, not pushing me back, not pulling me closer, just resting there. The contact was soft, almost trembling. My pulse hammered beneath her palm. "This is wrong," she whispered, though her hand didn't move. "Then why does it feel—" I caught myself before finishing, biting down on the rest. Her eyes searched mine, the space between us shrinking with every second. And then she asked the one question that broke everything open. "Do you really want me to stop?" The room fell into loaded silence. No answer, no movement, just her hand on my chest and my breath caught in my throat. Her hand stayed pressed against my chest, the question still hanging between us. "Do you really want me to stop?" I opened my mouth, but before anything could come out, a soft knock rattled the door. Both our heads turned, the sound slicing through the charged silence like a blade. She froze, her palm leaving my chest as if she'd been burned. Another knock followed, firmer this time. "Are you expecting someone?" I whispered. Her eyes flicked to the door, then back to me. A pause too long to be reassuring. "No," my pulse surged. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she crossed the room quickly, barefoot on the tile, and pressed her ear against the wood. Whoever it was didn't knock again, just waited. I stayed back, not sure whether to leave, hide, or confront. The screwdriver still lay on the table, suddenly useless. Finally, she cracked the door open, just enough for her voice to slip through. "Now isn't a good time," a male voice answered. I couldn't make out the words, but the familiarity in his tone made my stomach knot. She stepped into the hall for a moment, her voice low, hurried. Then she shut the door, leaning against it as though holding back more than just a visitor. Her face was pale, her breath unsteady. "Who was that?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she crossed back to the sofa and sat down, her hand trembling slightly as she picked up the glass of water on the table. Finally, she said, "My ex-husband." The words hit me harder than I expected. I'd guessed she was no longer with someone, but hearing it aloud, with him right outside the door, it made everything sharper, more dangerous. "He still comes around?" I asked carefully. She nodded, staring at the untouched water. "He thinks if he waits long enough, I'll let him back in. That I'll forget." Her lips tightened. "But I can't forget." I lowered myself into the chair opposite her, searching her face. "Forget what?" She hesitated, eyes flickering to mine. For a moment, I thought she might shut down, but instead, she set the glass aside and whispered, "The way he made me feel invisible, like I could be in the same room for hours and not exist at all." The honesty of it caught me off guard. I leaned forward before I realized it, my voice unsteady. "You're not invisible." Her eyes snapped up, locking on mine, and something in her expression shifted, as though my words had cracked through the wall she'd been holding. But then she laughed softly, shaking her head. "You don't know what you're saying. You're too young to understand what that kind of emptiness does." I should have let it go. But instead, I heard myself say, almost too quickly, "I know exactly what it does." Her breath caught, her hand pausing mid-gesture. The room went still again, but the balance had shifted. No longer her silence pressing against me, but mine pressing back against her. Her laugh, quiet, bitter, too soft to be real, still lingered in the room. But the moment it faded, she didn't look away. She sat there, shoulders taut, eyes fixed on mine as though weighing every word I had just said. "You don't know," she whispered again, but this time the edge was gone. It wasn't dismissal. It was fear. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, voice low but steady. "I know what it's like to want someone to notice you, to feel like you could scream and the person closest to you wouldn't even hear it." Her lips parted, like she was about to respond, but nothing came. The silence between us grew heavy again, not sharp like before, heavy in a way that made my chest ache. I should have stopped there. I should have let her keep her distance. But something in her eyes, the crack in the armor she'd been holding onto all night, pulled me closer. "Since the day I met you," I admitted, my voice barely holding, "I've noticed everything." Her breath hitched, just slightly. "The way you pause before opening the door," I continued, words tumbling now. "The chipped nail polish. The way you touch the edge of your sleeve when you don't want to be seen. I notice all of it, and I can't stop." Her hand froze where it hovered against her blouse, eyes wide now, like she hadn't expected me to strip her bare with words instead of touch. "That's not fair," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I know." I reached out before I could stop myself, my hand closing gently over hers where it rested on her lap. She didn't pull away. For a second, she didn't breathe. "You're young," she said finally, her voice trembling. "And I don't care." I cut in, too sharp, too fast. But I didn't take it back. The silence that followed was unbearable. Her hand still beneath mine, warm and unmoving. She searched my face for something. Hesitation, regret, doubt. But I had none left to give. When she finally spoke, her voice was hoarse. "If we do this, there's no going back." "I know," I said again, quieter this time. Her gaze softened, the fight in her shoulders collapsing all at once. And then, slowly, deliberately, she turned her hand over in mine, her fingers curling until she held on. The room seemed to exhale with us. The lamp hummed faintly, the city outside muffled and distant, as though the world had shrunk to just the space between her palm and mine. She didn't kiss me. I didn't lean forward. But the decision had been made in the silence. We weren't pretending anymore. Her hand stayed in mine longer than either of us expected. Not tight, not desperate. Just steady, as though neither of us wanted to be the first to let go. When she finally did, it wasn't rejection. She only shifted closer, sitting so near our knees almost touched. Her voice, when it came, was quiet, unguarded. I didn't think anyone would ever see me again. I turned to her, searching her face. I think that's all I've been doing since I met you. She smiled at that, not wide, not perfect, but real. A smile that carried years of tiredness and the fragile hope of something new. We didn't rush into anything. No kiss stolen under flickering lights. No promises whispered in the dark. What we shared was smaller but heavier. The decision to stop hiding. The knock at the door earlier. The unanswered phone. The shadow of her past. None of it disappeared. The risks were still there. But so was the truth between us now, undeniable. I stood to leave eventually because I had to, but before I stepped toward the door, I looked back at her. She was leaning against the sofa, her gaze soft and unflinching. Tomorrow, I said, testing the word, offering it. She raised her brows, just slightly. Tomorrow, I nodded. You won't have to be alone. Not if you don't want to. Her lips curved again, almost the same smile as before, but warmer this time, like she believed me. And that was enough. Walking home through the quiet streets, I realized what had shifted. She hadn't asked me to fix the light. She had asked me to stay. And for once, I didn't run. The danger wasn't in what we felt. It was in admitting it aloud, in letting it live between us instead of burying it. But we had. And in that fragile, unfinished way, it was more honest than anything I'd known before. Some people spend years waiting to feel seen. We had both been waiting, her in the shadow of regret, me in the ache of longing. And tonight, without planning to, we found each other in the middle. Whatever tomorrow looked like, neither of us would be invisible again.